Welcome to the Modern Application Development Screencast. In this short screencast, we'll learn how to do developer logging. Before we start, open the following applications on your Ubuntu desktop so that you can follow along with me. Browser, preferably Firefox, text editor, any IDE. I'm using Sublime Text here. You could use any. Or terminal, I'm using built-in terminal from Ubuntu, or you could use any. Now, when you're developing an application like the one you're seeing now, which we actually developed in our last session, you always end up asking questions. For example, when you're in a controller, whether the database is returning actual articles or how many articles is it returning, especially if you face an issue. So what we end up usually doing is doing a print statement, right? You actually end up printing some articles or this article's object, so that to make sure that you're not facing an error and you're actually getting correct answer. So you'll end up writing like this, and when you start and run it, I've already set up the environment, so I'm just going to run. So let me just go to the page and refresh. Okay, so you can see in the console that it's printing 6 article objects, and it seems to be a correct answer. Now you will probably end up doing so many such print statements all over your code just to debug. It's probably the easiest way and sometimes the most simplest way to do it too. I'm not saying it's completely wrong, but sometimes it becomes unmanageable, and hence we actually use logging, which gives us a lot of control on how we want to print the statement and where we want these statements to end up, whether into a file or in an email or onto console, or end up doing it at different levels, or we can attach a level to a statement, like whether it's a debug statement, info statement, warning statement, critical statement. Based on this info level or the level of the log, we can also end up handling them in a different way. Hence we usually end up using loggers, and probably that's the best process to follow once an application becomes a little more bigger. I mean, you can start with print statements, and then when you want to do a little more, you can replace them with logger.info or logger.debug. Ideally start from logger.debug from the day one, so you don't have to do this replacement and etc. Now Python comes with its own logging framework. You could use that, but Flask also comes with its own built-in logger implementation. Now when you go to Flask documentation, you can see the details of it. So it comes with a logger which are up at the app level that you could directly use. You don't need to do any configurations for the default usage. So we're just going to use logger.debug instead of print. Now if you see the levels, logger.debug is at the lower level, info is at the next, warning, error, and critical. This is in the level of severity. So we usually end up doing critical logging only if there is system failures or big errors that can bring down the systems. Let's say database is down, etc. In that case, the way we handle the logging also is to send an email to the developer or send an email to the support system. But most of the statements that we would use as part of print, we end up using either debug or info. So let's replace this by debug and see how it looks in the console. Because by default, Flask uses system out or console as the logging output handler. So now let me just see whether the server has started. Yes, it has, and just refresh this. Okay. As you can see here, the statement looks a little different. Here is the previous one with no timestamp or level info or where the statement was done, etc. Here much more detailed one, right? So that makes a lot of difference in itself, so that when you're debugging, that which statement was printed previous to which statement, etc. It makes it much more easier to debug. Now these statements are going to the console. Now we want to lead it to a file, which makes it easy to, for example, if you want to send it to someone else, you can always zip the log file and send it to your coworker or your fellow project developer. So we want to do a simplest config to send it to a file. So that we can do it in our main.py before we start the app. Before we create or start the app, I'm just going to import logging and set up the config. Okay, so here I'm setting it up, set up the config. The file will be called debug.log. The format of the logs will be like this. You can change the format. You can go look at the details of it and change the format. Right. So let's stop and start the server again and run it again. Okay, I'm going to refresh this. Okay, now you can see that there is nothing printed on the console after starting local development because all the logs are going to the file, which is defined here, which is called debug.log. So if you go to the debug.log, you can see that all your statements, including the one we saw previously, is in this. Right? This makes it easy because you can just zip it up and send it across. And now we have seen one configuration. Flask and Python logging allows various kinds of configuration that you can look into. For example, if Flask also has dict logging, dict config rather, that you can use to do the configuration. So you can search for Flask logger dict config. Okay. So here you can see that it's been configured here. Some of them goes to stream handler, some of them goes to, all of them are into stream handler only, console only, but you can also do other things. For example, if you want to send some of the errors to like an email, you can set up an email handler. You can use multiple handlers like this and handle various kinds of error. Usually we send the errors or critical ones to the developer as an email so that he gets it. Otherwise we just end up using stream handler or usually file handler because it's much more easy to search through the file content, unlike the console statement. That's it actually. I hope you'll end up using logs in your application so that it becomes easy to look through the issues and debug it and develop it. Thank you so much for watching.